tribes of Judah, Zebulun, and Issachar. These three tribes were the front ranks. Rishono Yiso, they shall set forth first. They were the advance guard, so to speak, the shock troops, the commandos, the Green Beret outfit. They were to constitute the first defense against any frontal attack and to bear the brunt of the enemy's first and mightiest blows. I'm sure you could imagine. They went first, and approximately 2 miles of people at all sizes traveled with them. Now, my friends, our rabbis explain why these tribes were chosen, wherein lay their strength to go first and to see what is up against the Jew as they traveled. And the Talmud answers that here lies the symbolism of our Torah teaching us wherein the strength of a nation who seeks to live justly and with liberty exists. In these three tribes, does the Torah try to teach us symbolically what constitutes strength of a people. These three tribes, my friends, the forefront of the people, were the tribes of Judah, the tribe that symbolizes sheer physical strength, the military strength needed and the might required for a people's existence. Plain and simple, Judah went because the people from this tribe were good warriors, strong in military and physical strength. Judah, in fact, was always known as the Lion of Israel. But with the tribe of Judah went along the second tribe to share the front with Judah. And this tribe was the tribe of Zebulun. This tribe, says our Talmud, was famed for its commercial activities, its talents and trade, its economic strength. The tribe of Zebulun, my friends, is symbolic of the economic resources necessary for a people's survival. A people cannot survive without the freedom and prosperity of a nation, without economic resources that come with this nation, without the freedom of its waterways and the freedom to fight, if must be, for a survival and for a livelihood for all within that nation. And this holds true to Israel today at this moment of great anxiety and possibility of war. Israel must live and can only live, and its right to have this life of an economic freedom and the right to survival, and as America says, pursuit of happiness. Indeed, the tribe of Zebulun traveled with Judah. A nation must be with strength of a physical sense and strength in an economic sense. He must be at the side of the Lion of Judah. The tribe of Zebulun had for its flag ships, symbolic of commerce. The third tribe to share this front was Issachar, symbolic of another vital component in a people's strength. The tribe of Issachar was famous for the wisdom of its members, for the comprehension of what a new situation demands. It was the tribe of Issachar who was symbolic of universities and places of study and higher learning. In fact, the Talmud explains Issachar, or the people that came from there, as to be people of Yodea Vino Leitim, endowed with understanding for the times. The qualities of mind and spirit are indispensable for a people's existence. the need for a nation to have places of learning, to seek to give everyone understanding and wisdom and a sense of spirituality and in a sense of science and understanding of the world and of mind is essential to the growth, to the freedom, and to the existence of a nation. Now, my friends, is this not a beautiful lesson to what constitutes strength of a people? What constitutes the forefront of a nation? What truly constitutes the defense of a country? This is the kind of defense that the small land of our brethren Israel has today, and indeed our United States as well. Due to lack of space, the speech must continue in the writing form in my files. This ends the speech given of Parshas Bechukosai, year 1967. Decorating and the Sukkot party for this year, period. New paragraph. Oops.
First of the months of the year. These, my friends, are the words of the Torah portion that we read this particular Shabbos. We are commanded by our God to begin our life of freedom because it was this Shabbos that the Jews started to prepare themselves for the freedom of Egypt. We were commanded when the Jews were ready to begin the exodus from this land by starting the new life not merely in a physical sense, but in a much deeper reverential way, by sacrificing and by proclaiming a holiday to God. This is the holiday of Passover and the Paschal Lamb, and more so, by making the month that they were freed as the first month of the calendar. Now, my friends, let me explain something to you right offhand, that the Egyptians at the time of Abraham, more so the time of Moses, had already had a calendar in existence that had 365 and a fourth days. The Egyptians. And that calendar was called the Sothic, S-O-T-H-I-C. It was lost and forgotten, but the Egyptians had that wisdom of the calendar. And then the Hebrews came along, who knew of that calendar, and said the first month we shall call by the name of Nisan, from the Hebrew word Nes, miracle. That after hundreds of years of slavery, hundreds of years of a ghetto life, you are now freed. I recall, my friends, when I was in college, I witnessed a rather beautiful and yet strange experiment. The professor took a glass bottle and put it on the table, and next to it he put a plank of thick wood and a nail. And he picked up this bottle and put the nail to the wood and banged in the nail into this heavy plank of wood with the bottle, and not even a chip or a break. Then he put the bottle down and took a little pellet and dropped it into the bottle, and the bottle shattered. And I recall the professor explained why this happened. And he said simply, when the bottle was being made, the outside was let to be cooled very, very slowly. And the inside of glass was cooled rapidly. And so the outside took this pressure, while the inside broke apart on a little pellet. I wonder, my friends, what a remarkable parable it contains for us. For the bottle is a perfect symbol of modern man, paying much attention to the outside, to our appearance and to our looks. We seem to be firm and resolute, capable of rugged resistance and existence. And yet how little it takes to break us down. How easily it is for us to go to pieces. We have a beautiful heart outside. I wonder how we are from within. My friends, as the Jews left Egypt They traveled 40 years in a desert. If we look closely at the freed slaves traveling to a promised land, we see that the saga of Israel 3,000 years ago is so remarkably true to the man's life today and indeed in every age. Let us for a moment, my friends, examine life. What is it? What is life? A little girl goes into her mother's cupboard and puts on her mother's dress or her mother's hat, or starts parading down the hallway with the mother's shoes and is proud of wearing mommy's shoes. I have a little girl that does it. A 15-year-old teenager counts the days when she will attend the first formal dance, or a 15-year-old boy counts the hours when he will be eligible to sit behind the steering wheel of a car. They all have dreams from a little one on. And these dreams are old. Today, a car. 50 years ago, when many of our grandfathers were children, it was something else. You know that old saying that the world doesn't change, perhaps just the expressions and the outlook. In fact, a kibitzer from 20 years ago today is called an appraiser. A person today is nervous. 50 years ago, you'd call him a sugar. But it's the same person, the same thing. A college freshman awaits with bated breath the moment he will hear that he's been accepted in a fraternity. And the President of the United States speaks with great enthusiasm of his goals for the land when poverty shall no longer stalk a land. Or we look upon a middle-aged couple who invests for the day that they shall rest in comfort. And for this day do they labor and they save. We look here for a moment. We find a mother and a father, a grandmother and grandfather, who, seeing the bar mitzvah of a friend, awaits with pride the day that their son and their grandson shall be on the pulpit upon his bar mitzvah. Indeed, my friends, as the Bnei Yisrael, as the children of Israel 3,000 years ago were traveling and groping through a desert to a land of milk and honey, so is man today groping through that same desert. Are not men of all ages and in all ages, as Israel of old, as we here tonight, searching for the Eretz Zolas Cholavot Vash, for the land that flows of milk and honey? This is life. There's no use kidding ourselves, otherwise we'd either be a hermit in the woods, or some fellow with a long beard and a long hair sitting in a park in San Francisco. But we know the truth that this is life. That search may take many ways. The visions may take many forms. It may be the quest for an ideal homestead, the yearning for a particular plateau of existence. It may be the form of a particular social and political organization. But each project a vision of a land flowing with milk and honey. But my friends, our Torah, who said that this month is to be the first, tells us of another episode. Our Torah describes a situation that happened quite often on the way to this promised land. Vayavdu Yisrael avodah zarah, and the Jews on their way rebelled against Moses, worshipped the golden calf, rebelled against their leaders, and wanted to return to the land of slavery. More than once, false values distracted and fascinated this Am HaKadosh, these holy people. And these false values hold true to our day as well. Quite often do we allow ourselves to be distracted from the true vision and from the true path. I am reminded in a sense of a florist who was given two orders at the same day. One was to a druggist who was just opening up his new drugstore in a new location. And the other one was for a judge who happened to pass away. And as he sent the flowers, the cards got mixed up. And the druggist received the card which said deepest sympathy. And the judge received the card, good luck in your new location. We wonder, my friends, is not the world or our inner thoughts twisting ourselves just opposite to the way it should be? What is our values? Is it like this woman who complained to her husband all the time that she wishes to have a more expensive apartment, has failed to satisfy the deeper needs, even of those who can afford to install all the available buttons? Indeed, my friends, today, as in ages past, our search for the promised land is blocked by expecting too much of the wrong things. It is in a sense something like Mark Twain said long ago about religion. Perhaps our visions today is a mile wide, as a river that is a mile wide, but only an inch deep. When the children of Israel began their trek in the wilderness, they expected the oppression of Egypt to be immediately replaced by a life of ease and plenty, as we do today. They failed to realize they had not yet reached the promised land. What they had hoped to be the end of the road was only a milestone. Oh, what a parable this is to the very man of our age. How much disenchantment results from identifying a transcendent goal with a limited reality, from believing that we have arrived when we are only on our way. If we truly look on life, my friends, we will see that no human relationship or institution has fully captured the ideal, be it capitalism or communism, corporations or partnerships, marriage or divorce, city or suburb. We cannot find the utopia of either man or the utopia of an institution. But Judaism's greatest contribution to man's quest for the promised land did not consist in our people's crossing the Jordan 40 years later. In time, the same people who came to Canaan said this is not the promised land yet, for they said the end of days and proclaimed this prayer, and it shall come to pass in the end of days that the nations shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning forks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall men learn war any more. But they shall dwell every man under his own vine and fig tree, and none shall make him afraid. This prayer was said by the Jews who most supposedly already lived in their promised land. And so even then they did not truly reach a goal. It was this prophetic vision of the promised land. The more it looms in a continuous and infinite task, whether it be learning or righteousness, love or enduring peace, freedom or faith, no matter how far we proceed, there is always further to go. Not in reaching the near at hand, but the aiming high and avoiding the infinite till we come closest to the promised land of life. I know where the cup of water is. There's a story told by a captain. Our Medrash relates a beautiful episode. You know, a boat sometimes has a pilot, and the pilot who travels this boat knows exactly where the sandbars is. And one day a man asked this captain, "You must know the river very well, that you know every shallow place." And he said, "No, I don't. So how can you lead this boat so carefully through all these waters?" And he answered, "I know only where the deep waters are." The same, says the Medrash, should be with life. know what a deep meaning or deep sense of your life should be. What a beautiful lesson our Torah reading is today. Make this the first month, only by the beginning, a beginning in glory. Yes, a start in freedom, to be sure. But this is the whole that you yet have to ask. And you have begun with faith and pomp in God, and you will not cross a desert without God. The greatest single resource we have to meet life's problem is the building of an inner faith, so that when a tiny pellet of trouble strikes us, we do not become shattered as that bottle. Strengthen your inner self, as did the Jews of old, and know then that in Sardis there shall still be
the glory of Nachas. Since tonight is our second family service,
I wish to just say a few interesting remarks in reference to what our Bible or our Jewish faith considers the family. The family unit always meant a lot to the Jewish people. We find this to be true from the very inception of the Hebrew faith. In fact, we do know the prophets use as a curse of God if one is exiled or broken from his family. Woe is it to the son who is chased from the table of his father. And this is exactly what the Medrash says was the curse that God gave Cain. When Cain killed Abel, do you recall? God cursed him, he shall be a wanderer. You would not have a family, a group, and a place. One of the worst curses that man could have. If he cannot say home, sweet home, there is no place like home. When we look in our Bible, we find indeed what the family is. Let's look at a little bit Abraham and Sarah and their relationship with their children. And perhaps the best example could be Jacob and his 12 sons. Jacob did make a move without all the family being with him. Where the family went, Jacob went. Joseph went to Egypt, and Joseph asked the entire family to come settle with them in Egypt. We find in our Bible quite often the expression used, mishpacha. Mishpachas HaKahosi, Mishpachas HaLevi, the tribe, the family of Levi, the family of Kahas, the family of Judah. When they went into the new and promised land, they were divided as tribes, not merely because they happened to be tribes as states, but because the family or the tribe of Judah was considered one great good mishpacha, faraway cousins, but family. And that's the way the tribes lived. The Talmud even says that it was a custom, and a beautiful blessing at that, a custom as a blessing, that each would rather marry into their own tribe. Something like those who came from the tribe of Judah looked for a woman that also happened to be from the tribe of Judah. Of course, he had 1.5 million women to look from, but he looked. Perhaps it's a carryover today also that a Galatiana doesn't want to marry a Polish, only a Galatiana. Or Litvax stays only with the Litvax, and so on. But this was a custom there. We have such laws we find in our Torah too, of family laws. We certainly know the expression family purity. We also find out that there's such laws of Goel Hadam. When somebody in your family is in need, you are required, first and above anyone else, to help him. He is Etza ve'atzomai, bone of my bone, Dame domai, and flesh of my flesh. We have such thing as Pidyon Shavuot, Tzedakah Mishpacha. If someone is captured, if someone is taken prisoner of your family, you should be the first one to see that you get it. And do we not read in our Torah quite often that if someone sells a farm or a house that was in his family for generations of generations, that was his inheritance, the entire family should get together to see if they cannot buy it back and put this man back on his feet. In our holidays, we find the holidays always grouped to families. We take a holiday of Pesach, the Mishpachas, to sits together. Even the Sabbath in a sense is the family sitting together. And quite often we find customs of one family visiting another. Why in Pesach we have the law that it's good to make the old Paschal lamb and invite many groups of families to sit together. My friends, in Jewish we have a word called yichus. I wonder if you ever heard that word, yichus. Agresa yichus. If someone goes to marry someone else, we find yichus. Let's see. If this and this family is from a great and noble mishpacha, and they look for yichus if the woman happens to be a daughter, or the man a son of a great man or great wealthy person. And this happens to be the old Jewish custom of looking for yichus. It may not have meant much, but they always looked. We know that it was the Jews first that organized such things known as cousins' clubs. Clubs of family themselves, which money went to charity. And of course, it was a Jew that said, the family that prays together stays together. It is an old proverb in ethics of our fathers. And therefore, we see the family again as one. We've heard quite often the expression Ayudah Shahabs, a Jewish heart. And Rabbi Akiva says a Jewish heart means the family. For if one feels that every and each one is part of his family, and he has this closeness, then he too will have closeness to all Israel as part of a family of Jews. And that makes a Jewish heart. I've seen many people, and I've heard many people say, that the Jews believe that there is only a people of wisdom. But my friends, the Talmud says if you are told there is wisdom among nations, believe it. What the Jew is first is a person with a personal touch to the other. God wants your heart with full heart. Keep a closeness to your family, for from that radiates closeness to all families of nations and to all people. May God bless each and every one of your families to have indeed nachas and good, and long life and health and joy from each other. To all the members of the AZA and the BBGs, you have chosen a Shabbos for your convention that does you honor indeed. For tonight, the Shabbos known as Shabbos HaGodol, the Great Shabbos, is symbolic of a beginning. It's symbolic of a start of a faith and the beginning of a people. We became known as Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, Am HaKadosh, the holy people. Tonight I wish to teach you youngsters why I am proud of being a Jew. Quite often, if someone would ask you, what is a Jew, you could try to explain. Why are you proud of being a Jew, you may find difficulty. Then perhaps if you know why you can be proud of being a Jew, the Pesach that will be coming, which is indeed a holiday for you, the youngster, then you may understand the pride and the hope that we have in welcoming you and in welcoming the Seder and all the festivities of this Pesach. And I want you to know, all the boys and girls and the adults who are here, that Pesach and all the ceremonies that come with it is geared for the youngster. The Manishtana, the 4 questions, it's the youngster's questions. The Abba Bonim, the 4 kinds of sons. The stealing the Afikomen, which all of you know. The Pesach songs that are sung, the Chad Gadyo, the Echad Miyodea, Lacho Ulachod, the Dayenu. In fact, the whole Seder is centered around the words, V'higareto levincho bayomahu, and you shall tell your son on that day the story of the Pesach. The entire Seder and Pesach has importance to us, to me, but mostly it has its importance to you, to realize that you are a people, to know from whence do we come, and where to do we go, and what is our you chose a very significant Shabbos for your convention. Now, what is Judaism? What is this faith that began when we left Egypt? First and foremost, Judaism does not begin with faith, not at all. The fact is, it ends with it. When the prophet asks, "What does the Lord require of thee?" he does not answer, "Thou shalt believe." There are many faiths that feel the entire faith is only "Thou shalt believe." But the prophet replies, to do justly, to love mercy, and finally, to walk humbly with God. All deeds of faith come last. First, justice and mercy, and this can be tinged with faith. I've heard many people say, and especially young men and young women, isn't one religion as good as another? It's a very good question, isn't it? All religions teach us not to steal and not to kill. What's the difference? And I hope that I may say tonight may be helpful. But I ask, please hear me out to the very end.
I do believe that Judaism, correctly interpreted, represents the highest, noblest form of religious awareness and guidance. I do believe that Judaism points out to me the ultimate goal of man as a spiritual being, and teaches me the most effective way of attaining that goal. I believe this, first, because I was born into a Jewish family and Jewish life. I was taught early in life the idiom of Jewish thought and experience. I was fortunate to be conditioned to behold spiritual values as a Jew. Judaism for me then became the norm, the gauge by which I judged all the doings of my life. In other words, I did not start from zero. I had a frame of reference which was mine, not someone else's, but mine. And once I started, and not from zero because my family gave me this Jewishness, then with study and maturity I became more convinced of Judaism's sublime character, of its theological nobility, and its grandeur. I give this glimpse of my personal spiritual journey, my friends, because I want you to understand a second important point. Can one say that one mother is as good as another, or that one child is as good as another, or that one country is as good as another? I don't really think so. To me, my mother and your mother is not like any other mother. My child is not just another child. Your child is more precious to you, and mine is more precious to me. My country to me means more than any other country. But my friends and youngsters, and this is important, because of my reverence for my mother, because of my love for my child, because of my devotion for my country, then childhood in general is precious to me, and I understand it, why it may be precious to you. Motherhood means a lot to me. Country means a great deal to me. Because of my personal feelings, I can respect and understand yours towards your own. Only when one is religiously informed and has true love for his faith and sees beauty in his religious expression, then can he truly honor and protect the right for another to believe his way, however he may differ in religious forms. Abraham converted people only to believe in God, not necessarily to follow his customs or his ways of observing his gods. This, of course, is what the Jew does, and this is what Abraham had in his one uniqueness, mine, but yet I respect yours. My respect for religion of others does not dilute my respect and devotion and dedication to my own. If it does, then I do not have any devotion for any faith. Certainly, I am hypocritical because I do not have for my own. There's a story told of a man that walked into a rabbi and said, "I'm an atheist." And the rabbi asked him, "Tell me, have you studied the Bible?" And he said, "No, I don't believe in that." "Have you studied any rabbinic writing?" And he said, "Don't be silly, Rabbi. It's ridiculous." "Have you studied any theology or read any books on what it means to believe or understanding of a God?" And of course his answer was in a negative as well. And so the rabbi said to him, "You're not an atheist. You're an ignoramus." So to me, speaking as a Jew and for Judaism, because I have learned and understood and wanted to know my faith, I say Judaism is a religion of moral choices. It is a religion of logic and reason and intelligence. It is a faith with flexibility in its rituals. Sosuhu achari levavachem v'achari enechem, asher atem zonim acharehim. In the Shema Yisrael we read, "Do not turn your eyes and your hearts to the ways and fads that you may wish to, or the whims of men that may come unto you, but to go and follow in the ways of God. For me, my faith guides and urges me to walk in God's ways." When to these, my youngsters and all my friends, is added the fact that when a Jew loyally identifies himself with his ancestral religion, he is standing in a historic continuity of over 4,000 years. His roots, then, are deep in history, and his vision is lofty as to the future. The reverent to religious and religions of all men, he recognizes with joy, while the teachings of all number 1,000, the ties which bind him to Judaism numbers 1,001. Pesach is for you the young. Be proud of your beginning. Know your faith. Understand what it means to be a member of AZA or the BBG. It is all part of us. Then as you celebrate Pesach, you will see beauty of Eliyahu, Elijah the prophet at the Seder, and indeed see that the words of our prophets are true. Do justly, love mercy, is to walk humbly with God. Indeed see that the words of our prophets are true. Do justly, love mercy, is to walk humbly with God. We will celebrate Mother's Day, and on its following day, Monday, we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaos, the 19th year of Israel independence. Perhaps this Shabbos is a perfect example of the soldering together of the mother, meaning the home, and Judaism, symbolic of the land of Israel, and everything that holy land stood for over thousands of years. I wish to speak tonight to all the parents, and I want the children to listen closely as well. Twice a day, the Jew recites in his prayers the commandment that became the basis for Talmud Torah, for the teaching of Judaism and Torah and our faith to our youngsters. Twice a day do we read in our prayers in the Shema Yisrael, "V'limanetem osam es b'nechem, ledaber bom b'shiftecha b'veisecha u'v'lechtecha v'aderech. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, speaking of them when thou walkest by the way, when thou liest down, when thou risest up, and so on. It is here that we are commanded to teach diligently our children the meaning, the traditions, and the Torah of our faith. And our rabbis long ago stated that this commandment of teaching children is not only the responsibility of the father, though in the prayer and in the commandment it says, thou shalt teach thy children, but the responsibility lies on the entire community. Its role to the utmost of this commandment. In fact, Savannah, and in a sense Savannah is unique in this, is one community where the Hebrew school is helped by the Savannah Jewish Council. Our synagogue itself subsidizes your children because the cost of tuition itself cannot uphold that school, and we subsidize the cost of the Hebrew education as well as the BB. And this community surveys have been made and paid for by the Savannah Jewish Council and by the synagogues and by other organizations to better education from the youngster to the teenager. Youth study groups have been organized, youth seminars of which I have partaken, adult seminars, and our own Sunday programs here at Agudas Sachem, whether you know it or not, is something we can be proud of. Yes, my friends, the community is doing its part. We of the AA, as an organization of a synagogue, is doing its part to the utmost. And believe me, we are. But what I wish to ask tonight is, what about the individual? Are you as a parent and you as a child being honored, doing your part in religious education? The late President J.F. Kennedy, a few years ago, initiated a campaign to stem the number of high school dropouts. It is an age of skill, and the unskilled is lost. The president then and his advisors were concerned with the potential economic havoc and internal danger to our country by these dropouts. Now, my friends, certainly while it is true that few of our Jewish youngsters drop out of high school, there is, however, this kind of threat, the dropout, to the spiritual corpus of American Jewry because of the tens of thousands of dropouts from Hebrew. Most of our children who receive any type of Jewish education terminate it at the ripe old age of 13. Some can't even wait to finish the school year. If they happen to be bar mitzvahed in April, they drop out on the morrow of their bar mitzvah dance. They couldn't last another month and a half in school. Indeed, my friends, sometimes I feel that the 10 tribes of Israel were not lost. They just became bar mitzvahed. The percentage of those that continue are so very, very small. It must concern all of us and should concern us deeply. Now, my friends, if only they would drop out of school, yet continue to come to shul once in a while. Let them come to the synagogue on the Shabbos only for an hour and a half. It is not too much, and it's quite enjoyable for those that do come and they know it. Let them come at least once a month. But they drop out from shul attendance as well. The day after they bar mitzvah, they join what I call the Book of the Year Club. They come once a year to open up this book called Prayer Book, a Rosh Hashanah to the next Rosh Hashanah. But yet I want you to know that at least we of Agudas Sachem are not taking this lying down. Let me give you a few examples that most of you perhaps don't know what we have been doing. We have a bar mitzvah club, whereby a boy, the day he becomes bar mitzvahed, is solicited by our cantor to pledge, to make a promise that it will continue to attend Shabbos services at least for another year. I wrote letters and I told all the bar mitzvahs, not only those of this last year, but the year gone by, that we have a bar mitzvah club. We invite them on this specific letter on a specific Shabbos to partake in the services so they could daven. We give them an aliyah so they can feel and not to forget what they have learned of their bar mitzvah. And it's been successful. They've been coming every Shabbos and partake along with the junior congregation. You ought to be here to see how beautiful it really is. We tried and I sent out letters to organize a teenage Shalashulas club. Now what is this? This is students and children, boys and girls, who are 15 and 16 years old, to please come on a Saturday evening for an hour, that's all it takes, to daven with us and then to partake with the Shalashudos. However, my friends, that was unsuccessful. The first 2 Saturdays we had 2 come, and then none. But I tell you this, we shall not give up. I had mimeographed a lot of letters, and I shall repeatedly keep sending them, until perhaps from the nucleus of 2, it'll become 22. I wish some of you would be here on a Shabbos morning, and see that we even have some of these bar mitzvah boys coming on a Sunday. We'd like you to come. Daven with us, put on your tefillin so you don't forget what that is. And then partake with the breakfast with all the men, as you yourself is now considered a man. And when we talk about our Sunday program, let me tell you this. We have excellent teachers. It's not a game of school that we play, but we have a school teaching program. Every child that was here this entire year learned and enjoyed what they learned. I know they can't wait till next year comes by again. I've had cases where children are badgering their parents, take me today to Sunday school. They don't want to be absent. Yet at the same time, we had no children from the age of 10 to attend. Is it because there are no children from the age of 10 years old in the Savannah community who are members of the AA and who have no other religious education other than what perhaps could have been given to them on the Sunday here in our school? The answer is no. There are those children. And I personally called those parents. And we personally sent them letters, telling them to please come. We would call their particular group a junior USY, so they would not feel like they're going to a Sunday school. But the result was 4 children, and then 3, and then nothing. Perhaps the reason is that they feel those who are 10 years and up already going to Hebrew school, and therefore don't have to come on a Sunday too. But they are mistaken, because the Sunday program is quite different and perhaps enjoyable too. We're willing to give them a breakfast, and then they'd have a little study for a half hour, and then they'd go out on trips, or play games, or whatever. A junior USY, but we had no response. And yet, my friends, we will not give up. My friends, let us not bury our heads in the sand. Many of our children, and we know it, are not at home in a synagogue service. Most are not knowledgeable in Jewish practices. There are some children who think that Mogen David, and this happened to me, the Star of David, is just a name for wine. And I asked a child once, what is Zion? And his answer was, it's a delicatessen. Indeed, the vast majority of our young people are Jewishly illiterate, and thus they stand in danger of spiritual asphyxiation. I do not have to quote any Jewish sources. I will quote Voltaire. It was Voltaire who once said, quote, one cannot desire that which is not on his mind, or which one does not know. Can a man love good wine when he has drunk nothing but beer? End of quote. In Judaism, my friends, ignorance is the mother of desertion, and casual Jews are most apt to become Jewish casualties. Or even in Russia, this is understood. In Russia, the Jew has synagogues, they let him come and pray. Anyone who wishes to observe a Jewish holiday can go on. There is no restrictions. There is only one restriction in Russia. They do not allow any Hebrew schools to teach or any Jewish learning for the youngster. The communists are well aware that with no Jewish learning, there will soon be no Jewish praying. My friends, the heart and center of Jewish life has always been and still is the study of Torah and the synagogue. Hershel once wrote, throughout history, nations have had their cultural and religious centers located in their capitals. Athens, Rome, Byzantium. The Jews had their real center, however, not in the capital. Their real center was in the Torah. And their cultural and religious centers took part of the Torah. And they took the Torah into exile with them. The Torah is the Jews' portable fatherland. End of quote from Hershel. Indeed, my friends, Torah is more than our wisdom and literature. It is our essence and destiny. Our synagogue is doing its best to help your child, but we all have an important task. We must create a climate of conditions in the Hebrew school, as well as at home, that will discourage our children from becoming dropouts from Jewish education. The course of study must meet the challenges of the space age, and so must the conditions and the hours and the days of the Hebrew school. It is not enough to teach Hebrew reading without righteousness, to teach our children prayers without training them in principles. Our children must learn that Judaism is a life to be lived and a culture to be enjoyed. The curriculum should not only teach subject matter, but values and ideas. History. Who are we? Where do we come from? Why are we so proud to be a Jew? And destiny. What does the Jew want? Jewish education should not only impart information, but should share inspiration. It should not just inform the person, but also form the personality. We must create a condition that a child should want to continue. Not at the age of 13 after going 4 days and tired, yea, he is happy, no more. Maybe if 3 days of school a week, he won't have this feeling, yea, it is over. Our children must come to realize that as Jews there is much that is noble in them, and to be loyal to that nobility. There's a story told of a child who ran to her mother and said, "Ma, do you remember that vase we had in the hall that was handed down from generation to generation?" And the mother said, "Yes, I do." And the child said, "Well, this generation just dropped it. Let us not drop this priceless heritage in this generation. Let us take to heart the words of Daniel Webster, who said, 'If we work upon marble, it will perish. If we work upon brass, time will efface it. If we wear temples, they will crumble to dust. But if we work upon men's minds, if we imbue them with high principles, with just fear of God and love of fellow men, we engrave on these tablets something which no time can efface which will brighten and brighten to all eternity. My children, be proud of being a Jew. Our synagogue wants to do everything in the world for you. Don't forget that synagogue is part of your life. Keep coming. Come to our synagogue on Shabbos and whenever you can, and we will hold you as dearly as angels of God. This past Sunday, we celebrated a day of honor and gratitude to our mothers. In fact, my friends, the word mother in every chord of human emotion throbs with the sanctity of birth, of home, and of sacrifice. It is not new. We find this in ancient literature and is as old as mankind itself. In fact, in ancient Roman literature and in Greek mythology, one can find quite often honor to mother. But the ancients respected the motherhood only in its productive stage, and that in grudging fashion. The underlying motive of Greek and Roman regard for women was a derision for their physical weakness. And therefore we find that Telemachus, the hero son of the Odyssey, speaks to his grief-stricken mother with the words, "Go to the chamber and mind thine own housewiferys. Speech shall be for all men, for mine is the lordship of the house." I'm sure most of you have read that in Japan, and I understand this holds true for Alaska as well, there was a place which was specially designated to leave your old father or mother when they became too old to travel around with you. In fact, in Japan, this place was called the place to leave your mother. I am reminded of a story that I read in reference to this, and that the story is of a man who was taking his mother to this place. And as she was going with him, she was breaking twigs and throwing it down on the ground. And when he asked her, "Why are you doing this for?" she answered, "I don't want you to lose your way back." Is this not a perfect? Respect thy father and thy mother. How often do we read, "Give honor thy mother and thy father"? We have a prayer known as the Mama Rochel, our mother Rachel, who cries and weeps for her children. There is a grave called Rachel's tomb, and how often have the Jews gone there in respect to their mother? Friday evening, we bless our children. We bless them with the words, "Yisimech Elokim Kesora Rivka Rachel v'Leah." May God give you joy, as our mothers Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Of course, we know them as the matriarchs. I do not have to actually look in the Bible itself, and the Talmud gives us such perfect examples. In the Talmud, we find such expressions that because of the merit of women was Israel redeemed from Egypt. It is told that the husband is to treat his wife better than himself. Rabbi Tarfon, one of the great scholars in Talmudic days, would bend down so that his mother can use his back as a step when she wanted to go into her bed. Rabbi Yosef, the Talmud relates, when he heard the footsteps of his mother, he would rise and say in front of everyone, "I rise before the presence of God." What a difference then to the story that I've heard. You know, we all know of the famous picture of Whistler's mother. And it is told, the picture is, of course, of the old woman sitting on a rocking chair. And it is told that one day Whistler came home and found the mother bent down on her knees, scrubbing the floor. And he looked at her and he said, "Ma, you got off your rocker?" My friends, we can go on giving examples of our respect to a mother and women all night. For that matter, we can do the same thing to show respect to a father and man. I wish, however, to discuss tonight motherhood in the relationship between mother and father, wife and husband, to reflect our minds what marriage and the holiness of marriage must mean to us. For what better way can we honor the mother than to love and reflect the reverence for the entire group called the family? Now, my friends, what is marriage? We find this mentioned in our Torah with the expression, and the Lord said, Lo tov hayis lo adam levado. It is not good for men to be alone. Therefore shall man leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife, and they shall be as one. This, in fact, is the expression of marriage, that a man is to take a woman and beget a family. In fact, the Talmud says, he who lives without a wife doesn't really know the joy of life. With a wife at our side, we broaden our interests, we deepen our insights, we become at once happier and more precious. Now, my friends, the Hebrew word for the process of this being as one is kiddushin. In other words, the Hebrew word for marriage is kiddushin, taken from the word kodosh, from the word holy, reverence. To us, my friend, commitment. In fact, says the Talmud, children that come from a marriage of convenience, of a man and woman who just got married because they wanted to or had to, but that there was no love between them, or because the urge of sex or of money. Such children, says our Talmud, grow up to be either misfits, socially, psychologically, and ethically. And it makes simple sense. A child from such a marriage would only hear bickering and argument, and no sense of love or reverence to each other in that house at all. And this child will grow up with that attitude. When a Jew is married, he literally accepts the word of marriage, the word kiddushin. For that word implies what marriage should be, kodosh, reverence. In marriage, you take two different personalities and put them together as one. You need to start out with kiddushin, with reverence for each other's feelings. Without the reverence, the marriage ceremony becomes an empty ritual. The family will inhabit an apartment, a house, a place to live and lie down, but never a home. Marriage as kiddushin for the Jews has as its basis appreciation for the partner's soul, for your partner's heart, and for your partner's mind. Oh, my friends, don't misunderstand me. This is not to say that once in a while a husband cannot argue with his wife, nor she with him. Well, this is impossible. If someone says they've lived through an entire marriage without once raising their voice or once arguing with his wife, there's either a saint, an ishki mensch, a malach, an ishki mensch, or he's a good liar. In fact, we find that husband and wife argued once in a while, even in our very Torah. We all could remember the argument Abraham had with Sarah. When Sarah wanted to send Hagar and his son away, and Abraham argued with her. We know of an argument that Rachel had with Jacob. 10 libonim, give me children. And Jacob had to really bawl her out. There were arguments. We know of an argument of Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac loved Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob. Can you imagine, as the children grew up, the arguments and the conflict that these two had? Well, even Moses says in our Torah, argued with his wife, or at least he did not live with his wife for a long while. Va'isha Kushis. Miriam gave him the business and told him, why don't you get together with your wife a little more often? Only one couple, a famous couple in our Torah, that is mentioned by name, and we find no arguments there, was Adam and Eve. When Eve gave Adam the apple, he didn't argue and he took it and ate it, and you see what happened. The second attitude of kodosh, of marriage, is righteousness. We must extend generosity and righteousness to our partner just as much as we would do to a person who is of no relationship to us. Even if he or she be wrong, or someone you don't know does something wrong, no, you extend righteousness. Next time he'll do better. He didn't know. You'll find for him excuses. Why can't this be true to your own wife or to your own husband? Too often do we exaggerate 2 cents worries into great molehills of mountains. Too often does a husband and wife misunderstand because they are unwilling to understand. Kiddushin, says the Jewish word for marriage, deal with righteousness and kindness even in a time of wrongdoing for one to the other. But my friends, what crowns the Jewish marriage, what crowns Kiddushin, is a third quality, the quality of Rachmanis, pity, mercy, but meaning literally that beautiful word, mother love. There is something mystical in the mother's self-surrender to her baby. Mother love is a passionate desire to spend herself. Now this same trait of unselflessness must be in the formula of marriage itself to the entire family, giving of yourself to each other. I'm reminded of a story of a little child sitting in class, and a teacher asked, "Who's the greatest man that ever lived?" And all the children got up and gave all kinds of answers. And one little boy jumps up and says, I know, and the teacher asked him who. And he says, Mama's first husband. Now, my friend, family also involves a third party. And our Talmud teaches us a basic lesson in this too. Of course, the third party is the children. The family is a laboratory for social ethics and the best school for children. Basic conventions and tendencies are born and bred by nature and nurture. Our rabbis say, Chanuch l'na'ar al pi darko. Teach the child, bring him up according to his abilities, to his age, to his understanding, to his acceptance in society and environment of life. In short, says the Talmud, the same honor children are to give to parents. Parents are to give in proportion to their children. Children sometimes requires wisdom and patience to ignore present unpleasantness for future happiness. Children require righteousness as not to judge too severely at all times. Gemara says, "Hamevi yira bebeso mevi gehenim." One who brings fright and fear in his house at all times, strictness, brings the Gehenim in his house. Literally brings hell to his house. And this is so true. Parental influence will be of great value if children share a loving comradeship with father and mother, rather than fear only. Respect with father and mother, rather than frigidity of father and mother. Good teachers, my friends, as well as good parents, must aim to make themselves unnecessary. And especially is this true to married children. On this week of the celebration of Mother's Day, or what I'd rather call Family Day, let us resolve and remember that all the welfare of mankind depends upon the atmosphere, upon the attitude, upon the tenure of the family life. The world's future rests in the last resort, not upon prosperity and depression cycles, but upon the character of its sons and daughters. Mankind's destiny will be reached or thwarted, not by success or failure of any group, but by the homes we build, the spirit which inhabits them, and the youth which will translate it into action. Kiddushin, reverence, justice, kindness to each other, a mutual growing up together. This is the family for the Jew. Next sermon, Parshas Bechukosai, continues on this tape and then around the other side. In the name of Agudas Hachem, I am honored tonight to welcome the Scouts.
And pay you the honor you so reverently deserve. We are honored to have you all here tonight, and your families with you. I wish to address myself to you, the Scouts, tonight, and of course to everyone else here. Because as Scouts, you, more than any ordinary youngster, can readily understand to uphold your religion, your faith, your religious worship. You could understand more than any ordinary youngster what it means to keep living. Is it not the teaching that the Scouts have also part of the creed and teachings of Judaism from the moment that faith was inspired and taught to the world? My friends, Sunday, we celebrate Memorial Day. For most, it will be just another vacation weekend, with sleeping late, or idling around in the house, or taking the family for a ride or a picnic. Some may even listen closely to the Minneapolis 500 race, which is to be an exciting one, and few, but only few, will make a pilgrimage to the cemetery and for a fleeting moment pay tribute to a fallen soldier. But this is what the world is. So many died to uphold that which our United States stands for. And so many are still giving their lives today and at this very moment for the same principle. We live today in times when our country must uphold its strength and its banner of freedom. Now, my friends, what makes a country strong? In what form or manner can a nation, any nation, exist with principles of liberty? If you think strength means armies, then I'll have you know you only to open the books of history and find that that is not necessarily so. Rome had the greatest armies, yet with their armies they were barbaric people, and with their armies Rome fell. Now, my friends, and you the Scouts, I want you to listen carefully. Our Torah, in fact, tells us a nation can be strong and righteous, and how it makes a nation strong and righteous. And what our Torah describes as strength, written then in a desert, is so true to this very day and age that we live. What is the strength of a nation? Now, my friends, while the Jews left Egypt, they were traveling in a desert, a hostile land and a hostile environment, with hostile enemies bent on destroying these people. We have it happening today too. If we look in our Torah, we find indeed, as soon as the Jews got out of their land of slavery, Egypt was back of them already. At the Yam Suf, at the Red Sea, they finally crossed the Red Sea, and Amalek started the war. After they vanquished Amalek, we have Bashan, Uk Melech Bashan, and then the Amoris, Sikho Amori. And with God's help, the people of Moab and the people of Edom battled each other. They forgot that Israel was in the desert. Otherwise, they would attack Israel too. We recall the war where Moses lifted his hands in prayer, and then the Jews were winning. And when he put his hands down, says Apumish, the Jews were losing. They had war already right in the desert. And our Torah tells us that the people
themselves to protect themselves.
First of all, the Torah describes very simply, "Haluktim olu avosinu." When our Jews left Egypt, they did not leave with empty hands. They left armed. They had the spears and shields and the swords and the bows and the arrows, just for this particular reason, if an enemy attacked. But most of all, the Torah describes that the Jews had their strength, and the Jews protected themselves in the encampments and manner by which the Jews traveled in the desert. Now this is the description, the way the Torah gives us how the Jew encamped. Now I want you to picture this clearly. I want you to imagine there are close to 2.5 million people traveling in the desert. 600,000 only of army age, but if we told it all, it was approximately 2.5 million people. Now as they travel in the desert, the Torah describes how they are to pitch their tents at night, and sometimes for days, and quite often for months, and in one place they stay there for years. In the center was the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the temple, the place of sacrifice and the place of prayer. Now around the Mishkan, on this side, on the west side, I call this the west, so maybe north and south, but let's just call it that way. On one side, to the right, were 3 tribes. And to the left, another 3 tribes. Just like a box. And to the back, 3 tribes. And to the front, 3 tribes. And so the Mishkan, the temple in the middle, and all around, dwelled close to 2.5 million people around this particular center. Now the 3 tribes